Hello, everyone. I'd like to introduce Carole Hopson. Carole is a Boeing 737 captain for the United Airlines based in Newark, New Jersey. I'm sure many of you who are listening are thinking, United Airlines, did you say? We've flown United Air. I have. I know I have. So, after a remarkable 20-year career as a journalist and executive, Carole decided to follow her dream to become a pilot and share her passion with others as a flight instructor, along with raising her family. Walking away from executive level positions, she went to flight school with gusto and completed flight training at the peak alongside her corporate accomplishments. She was a writer, don't forget, she was a journalist. So she stuck to her roots as a writer. And Carole has also published her debut novel, A Pair of Wings, based on the life story of a pioneer aviatrix, Bessie Coleman, the first American to earn a French civilian pilot's license. Carole also heads the Jet Black Foundation, which is a foundation which I'm very excited to know more about, dedicated to sending 100 Black women to flight school by the year 2035. What I forgot to mention is that Carole is American, but I think once you hear her speak, you might recognize her accent and appreciate that. So, welcome, Carole.
Well,
I'm
thank
looking forward to talking to you and sharing stories with you. I mean, as you know, when we last met, I mentioned to you about my podcast, Stories Seldom Told. And essentially, with my podcast, what I ask my speakers to do is to share their stories. What the challenges that you had in your life? What kind of dreams or aspirations were you? I mean, were your challenges completely destroyed? I have no idea. And listeners, believe me, Carole has not shared anything with me other than that little piece of document that I have just read out verbatim to all of us about Carole being an airline pilot and writing a book about somebody else called Bessie Coleman. So I'm all ears, Carole. The floor is yours. I would love for you to share a story seldom told.
Well, good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And you're absolutely right. You kept the lid on everything. I wanted to kind of ooze and talk, but nope, nope, nope. Save it. Save it. Delayed gratification is a very important thing to learn and to have. So
Absolutely.
thank you. And thank you for that warm introduction. I'd love to start at the beginning.
Please.
Um, I have always wanted to fly an airplane from as long as I could remember, from as early as when I could spot one up in the sky. I wanted to fly an airplane. And you're right, from my accent, you know I'm American.
Exactly.
And here's what's something in a place where there is endless opportunity. I thought that it seemed an impossibility to fly. Why? Because I never saw anyone who looked like me. I never saw a woman, and I certainly never saw a Black woman, and I certainly never saw a Black woman with eyeglasses. I have on contacts today. And so it just seemed ridiculous, silly, like it couldn't happen. And I went on to high school, I went on to college, and in high school, I was a swimmer. Half of my scholarship to the University of Virginia was athletic, and half of it was academic. That summer before I went to college, I was hit by a car. It was devastating. My hip, my knee, and my ankle were broken. And so the idea that I would grab that half of the scholarship for athletics was not going to happen. I was lucky to be able to walk again. And the academic scholarship, well, it covered half of my tuition. The other half I now had to make up. So I had all sorts of jobs during college, from secretarial jobs, tutoring jobs, all sorts of jobs. And by the end of my, goodness gracious, by the end of my sophomore year, I was exhausted, just exhausted. And my sister said to me, her name is Lorraine Carey. She also is a United States best-selling author. She went to school at University of Sussex. Anyway, she said to me, you're standing on a cliff. I don't want you to jump off. Just step back. And when you step back, there's amazing perspective. I want you to think about what you really want to do. I said, well, I can't even let what I want to do leave my lips. It really seems ridiculous. But I've always loved speaking Spanish. So maybe that's something. She said, great, go to school in Madrid. I applied at my school. No one else had applied that year. And there was scholarship money. So away I went. And I did my sophomore year in Madrid. I came back, finished school, and went on to do one of the things I knew I could do well and I could make a living at. And I became a newspaper reporter. And for 6, maybe 7 years altogether, I was a newspaper reporter, the last 6 of which I was a police, the last 5.5, I was a police reporter. In the beginning, oh my goodness, people would, I was writing stories about bad people who did bad things. And the first encounter I had with any kind of death or bodies, and I was nauseous. But by the end, I said, well, who's buying lunch today, guys?
Hmm.
And it's amazing how quickly you can become numb, how quickly we adapt. It's one of the first things I learned, adaptation.
Hold on a
And
sec. Sorry to interrupt, Carol, because I mean, that's already powerful and I want to focus on that. But I want to take us back a little bit because you've told me three different things, and all of which to me is important. Um, so I'll pause the adaptation, hold that thought, please. But I want to first ask you the first point that you said, which was the idea of the fact that from whatever age I recognized a plane in the sky, I wanted to fly. And you needed glasses. What age were you when you required glasses?
10 or 11,
Oh, very young. Yeah.
yes.
And so you needed glasses to see, and therefore you made an assumption that there's obviously no chance that you can become a pilot because you can't see well enough. You need the extra appendage to actually look. So that was number one. But you were clearly good at sports, and you were so good at sports that you got a 50% scholarship to study at university.
I was competitive.
Competitive. So but hold on. Tell us a little bit about that idea and your emotions and your feelings. I want to know you. You, Carole Hopson, at the age of just before you're starting university, you're what, 17,
Yes.
18,
Well,
something like
I
that?
was 16 when I was hit by the car. I started when
Oh,
I
you
was
were
17.
16. Yeah, so you were
I
16 years.
graduated early from high school.
So you are a 16-year-old young lady at the crux of what you think is going to be your world. And then I won't even go into detail about the accident. It happened, but you're suddenly no longer in a position to be getting into competitive sport. I'm using the word, my ignorance, but athletics, but competitive athletics, to which is what how you won the scholarship. Tell me how you felt.
So I'm fine with talking about it. I've wrestled my demons on this one. And let me tell you why it is so important to talk about it. At 16, I graduated from high school early. I had suffered no obvious setback. There were plenty, but nothing that was obvious,
Not a catastrophic.
nothing catastrophic that you could see. On the inside, my parents had divorced, which caused me to go to a different school. So those were things that were that they were catastrophic. They were life-changing.
Hmm.
Because no one else saw them, I was able to smooth over and keep going. But what was catastrophic about being hit by that car was that it was a hit and run. And so I remember when the car hit me, I went up and it was slow. When I came down, it was fast. And I literally came down on the hood of the car and the guy kept going. There were two guys who were sitting there. It was in Philadelphia where street eating is part of the culture, right? I mean, people buy their sandwich on the street, they buy their soda, their ice cream. We have ice cream trucks that go to it. There's a lot of street eating because you eat outside. And so there were trucks eating trucks. And these two fellas were sitting on a wall and they saw what happened. One grabbed me by the scruff of the neck and pulled me. The other ran after the car. And as the lights that were timed on this big street, one street went into the city and one street went out. This was going out of the city. He ran after and stopped the guy at the next light. It was a block, a short block. Avenues are long, blocks are short. and he got the police and everything. I say all that to say this. So it was the first, and you, gosh, you are so on point. It was the first time that I had a visible setback. It was the first time that in a young and a strong body, I'm tiny, but very, 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 very strong. It was the first time in a strong body that my physical had been broken, and that the comeback was as much mental and spiritual as it was physical. When the cast comes off, that leg is like spindling.
Of course.
Well, I've always had some thunder thighs. Well and down from below and down, very well and down. And it was shocking, shocking to see such a weakness. Because I'm young, I'm not realizing that it won't be that
So,
way tomorrow.
what are you feeling in your head? The
Ooh,
16-year-old who had X, Y, and Z dreams at university. And clearly, I mean, to begin with, 50% of your scholarship has gone down the tubes. You've
that's
got to
right.
find the money. And
Right.
that's a given. And you probably knew that immediately. But
Oh,
how do you see yourself at that moment? Are you feeling
so
sorry? I don't want to put words in your mouth. How are you feeling? I don't want to say it rather than I want to ask you how you felt.
definitely self-pity.
And what are you saying to yourself?
Oh my God. Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Can everybody just slow this thing down? This can't be me. I graduated from high school early. I have this scholarship. I have this bubble.
So, do you know, we talked briefly before we started recording this interview, Carol. We talked about the idea of acceptance in various different areas. Did you accept pretty quickly?
I'm still
Was
struggling with
there
that
that?
notion. You know, a friend of mine who I know who's Israeli, another friend I know who's from the Congo, another friend of mine who is from Kuala Lumpur, another friend of mine who's Nepal. They all say the same thing. They say, you Americans, for two things. They all say the same thing. They're from all over the world. My buds, friends. You all Americans, you don't like two things. You don't like the word no, and you don't like to accept.
Do
God,
you agree with that?
yes, yes. My gosh, yes.
Okay, okay.
I don't like the word no. No, I don't.
But a lot of us don't like the word no.
A lot of
You're
us
not
like,
alone in there.
but that notion of acceptance
Hmm.
is so, I gotta say, it's American. It's me. It's with the competitiveness, right? Because well, there's got to be another way. No, 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 no. I know this is broken right now, but don't we have a pill for that? Like, can I, come on, let's go.
There's got to
But
be another way. That was your mantra, really. Yeah.
opportunity is not to be squandered. I gotta go. I'm gonna go and I'll be all right. Cast came off. I was beginning very slowly to get stronger. And I knew that money was difficult and it wasn't to be wasted. I had to go. And I went.
But here's a question, because the point that you said just now, and you must appreciate that this is heard in many countries. And I know you're a world traveler because of the fact that you fly an airplane, but you may not even have been to some of these countries. So I want us all, including me, not to make assumptions and for you to explain to us what do you mean by the community that you come from? I don't want to make an
So
assumption on that.
I'm glad you asked. So I am from West Philadelphia. And whenever I say that, people hear the Will Smith song, West Philadelphia, born and raised.
Yeah.
So I'm from an area of Philadelphia where it is, or it was, extremely poor and humble, but very well taken care of. Then there were, the drug wars, there was, the 70s, the 80s, 90s, and the community fell into disrepair completely. It's from an area of the city very close to what's called the bottoms, nowhere to go but up. So
Hmm.
my parents moved to a home only about a mile and a half away. But that mile and a half was a whole different world. But my grandmother still lived, my mother's mother still lived across the street. So we would come and go from there often.
And you could see the difference when you were traveling between the 1 mile.
Oh my goodness. It was like someone turned the light on in the closet. Like you go in the closet, it's dark, and somebody turns on the light, and you can see the shoes, your coat, whatever reason you
Yeah.
went into the
Yeah.
closet. So I could see why my parents wanted me to speak well, to go to a school where there were opportunities, to think beyond the walls of a
Of bottom.
house.
Of that area called bottom.
I understood what they were doing.
When did you understand that though? Because I think this is an important question for us to for us to appreciate so that we know from you. So, you're only 16 years old. We have to remind you of that. And you're a little 16-year-old who's in a hell of a lot of pain, and her dreams have suddenly gone out the window of competitive athletics.
Right,
She's got to make money because half the scholarship has disappeared.
right.
So if you go back to zero, one, maybe not zero, but three, four, when you are more compass mentors, you're engaging with your family, your parents, all of that's going on in your life. When were you aware that the community that you lived in and you grew up in may not, you know, is a struggling one, and you need to, like your parents were saying to you, you needed to get out of that. You needed to make good.
Super early. My parents moved there when I was two, but they kept that house. And my grandmother, my mother's mother, lived across the street. So there were frequent returns. My father's mother lived in suburban New Jersey, which right over the bridge. It's suburban Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So both my father's mother and my parents now lived in suburbia where there were lots of trees and there were more freedoms. You could walk down the street at night. You couldn't walk down the street in our neighborhood at night.
Ah,
That was a no.
yeah.
That was no, no. So I was two when we moved, but like I said, we went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's my grandmother, my mother's mother. So we were always there. And it was only a mile and a half away. So we were always there. But when we would go through what was known as Cobb's Creek Park, right? There was like a little creek there, and it was very woodsy. And the difference in the Cobbs Creek Parkway was the street was maybe a tenth of a mile. And in that tenth of a mile, the light went on. You went from urban and row houses through the park. It was windy. Smell was different. Air was
Smell
different.
was different. Isn't that interesting?
City, we had, oh girl, you taking me way back now. So so we lived on a corner and there was a sewer there. And we used to call it the suey hole. And
I'm sorry.
it's all right, sweetheart.
It's
We're
what it
there
was.
now. We're there. Let's stay there just for one moment.
Yeah.
So whenever it would rain,
Oh,
oh, image, the streets would flood and it would smell and things would come up through the
of
sewer.
course it would. Oh,
There was no such thing because there was no overcrowding in the suburbs. There was no such thing. There was no sewer hole, suey hole. There just wasn't. And that one environmental thing, rain, would bring so much of a difference. You would smell the asphalt. You could smell what your neighbors were cooking. You know, you would during that song Dwayne Johnson says smell what the rock is cooking, that there's a DJ that repeats that all the time. So you could smell what your neighbors were cooking. You could there were so many smells. It was so busy in the burbs. I could my grandmother, my father's mother lived on the approach path at Philadelphia International Airport. And I would lie on my back, swing my leg, look up at the airplanes. Hey, where do you think that airplane's coming from? And my grandmother would say, look real, she had really, really good distance vision. I didn't get that. Anyway, she would say, that one says Air New Zealand. That one says Air India. That one says Air Canada. She says, even if I can't see them, look at the tail. Oh my God. Like she taught me a lot. My mother's mother was an excellent cook, was great with, knowing kind of the palpation of life. So I got great from both
okay. So,
amazing women.
so now let's take you with this because we need to know the measure of Carole Hopson. and that the literally the accident, literally and metaphorically, because you said to me that it affected you not just physically, but spiritually, emotionally, mentally. In every which way, the rug was pulled from under your feet. Because it's not just about I am now suddenly physically disabled, temporarily, thank the Lord, but at that moment in time, you didn't know for how long you'd be physically disabled. And what am I going to do? And so now let's take you back to that cliff and your sister.
Yeah.
And your
So,
sister said to you, come away from the edge of the cliff. My question to you is, what were you doing at the edge of the cliff to begin with?
well, I worked 3 jobs. I worked until midnight every single night of college. So I went from thinking, talk about not accepting. Oh, okay. Well, look, I'll get over this soon. We'll just get back to accepting it and realize that there was this diminished state, to going away to school, to not having kind of the very American quintessential college experience. Oh, boo-hoo, poor me. Right? Mine was very different. Now I was in this environment where everybody around me was going to parties, was joining sororities, they were going to football games. I was going to work. I had 3 jobs. I couldn't be late for any of them. And I picked the last one was this remarkable job where I did audiovisual equipment. I would plug it in, you take it on carts into the education school, and they always had presentations. The people were very nice. But it was till midnight because they did a lot of night school in the School of Education. And so my boss was lovely. He was this nice man. He looked like I'm trying to think of a famous actor. Not he was Danny DeVito in size and humor. Um, and he was a lovely man. And he said, "Look, Carol, when you're not working, now make sure you get the stuff there on time, plug it in, troubleshoot. Stuff never works, right? Because all that stuff is old." He said, "Plug it in and do your best." He says, "But you can study. There's a couch in my office. You can sleep. Do recuperation for you. I like you," he
Oh,
says.
how lovely.
God, it was this adult who was very kind to me.
Yeah, you need kindness, don't you?
You
These
need
little stories of kindness do make such a difference.
You need reprieve. You need to know that you are now human. I felt like a little automatron. I would go job to job to job to job to job. It's class and class and class and class. And all of a sudden I went from being very young to feeling, old. And my dad used to say that everyone wants to get older, but no one wants to be old.
Mhm.
And so I felt at 17, 18, I felt old. And my sister said, go and do what you love. Now, flying still was impossible
Or is it
for
not?
me.
I was going to ask you that. Okay.
No, and I didn't even tell her. I didn't tell anybody I wanted to fly. It just seemed so silly. It just seemed ridiculous. How would I even do it? Most
How would
pilots,
you learn to do it? You need the money for that.
how would I learn? How would I even gain access to that special club? Who had the key? And so, as a members only kind of club, most of the pipeline of pilots came from the military. Well, because my eyesight wasn't good enough back then, now the rules have
Things have
changed.
changed, yeah, but not then. Yeah.
Yes. Right. We have such a hard time recruiting pilots. Also, the military has changed the way that they train pilots. And so even if I had gone into the service, I wouldn't have been guaranteed a pilot slot because of my eyesight. So I was like, all right, but whatever, whatever. I love speaking Spanish, so I'll go over to Madrid. And that was eye-opening to me. Travel is the best kind of education. Another lesson.
But why is that? Why do you think that is? I agree with you, but why? Well, how does it
Along
educate us?
along the way, I always thought that that little town that my parents moved me from, that they would get me ready. They would get me ready to go, to move out, to see different, to see perspective. That lying in the grass and kicking my leg and watching the planes when I was 4 or 5, it was more than pastime, it was education. When I was 12, it was a way to get out of chores. But along the way, I I don't think I realized that as you go, the people that you meet, remember I just said all those people I met, my girlfriend from Nepal, right? My friend from um my friend who was Dutch. I mean, along the way, you're meeting people who've grown up completely different than you.
Mhm.
There's some unbelievable shared values, yet their lives, their parents, the fact that a girlfriend of mine who was Dominican, her grandmother lived in the house, her mother lived. So my grandmother lived across the street, but not in her home. Some of my friends, Caribbean friends, their grandmother, the cousin, the aunt. So just experiencing different, I think, makes you more accepting.
And
You're
something you said also, I find, certainly my podcast has taught me that because I've interviewed so many people in so many different parts of the world. And the idea of what you just said, the idea of shared values. Now, you could be sitting in America, somebody else could be sitting in Afghanistan, a third person could be in Trinidad, and the fourth could be in New Zealand, as an example of four interviews that I've done. And yet, all four of these people have some similar shared values. And perhaps they've never left Afghanistan or Trinidad or New Zealand or America and gone to any of the other countries. And there's something else there. There's a
I,
seamlessness, don't
I
you
love
think?
that. I love that. I do think that. So funny you said Trinidad. My great grandfather, my grandmother, my mother's mother is from Trinidad, and my husband is in New Zealand as we speak.
How about that? How would I have known that? How
I
amazing.
think you know a lot.
But that's so lovely. No, but let me come back to you, Carol, and to your ideas of, you've said a few times already that you're competitive, but certainly if people are listening to you now, they will also appreciate that competitiveness does not necessarily match. A lot of people, when we use the word competitive, would also add, and you may shoot me down, things like ruthlessness, things like I'm going to get this, or that's it, I'm going to push everybody out of the way because I am competitive and this is what I want and this is what I'm going to aim for. What little I know of you, there's a contradiction there.
Yeah, not me. So I think that there's listen, you're absolutely right. There's
That's not
competitiveness.
you. There's competitive.
No,
So tell me about this idea of the word you've chosen and the fact that you want to compete, you want to do well, you have ambitions, you want to get out of that area
yes.
and have the light switched on and have a different smell and
Yes.
breathe different air, literally and metaphorically,
That's right.
and grow your wings, again, metaphorically or literally. And
Yeah.
so, what does that look like? And what is it that you said to yourself that helped you achieve it?
So I think one of the things competitive is part of what I am. You're right. Ruthless, no. No, I'm not. I believe in rules. I really do. And good pilots are rule followers, right? We're not breaking them. We're following rules. I also think that there's something to resilience. And I spent a lot of time reading about resilience. What makes someone resilient is that, oh man, it hits me in a place. It's like, oh, way down in the nerve of my tooth. One of the things that makes you resilient is a spirit of optimism. Not, recklessness or you believe every day is sunshine. I've got my rosy glasses on. No, 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 no. I believe that tomorrow will come. And that when tomorrow comes, I'm going to have a new start. It doesn't mean, oh, la, 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 la. No, no, no. Tomorrow might still be difficult. Now, that's part of gaining a little bit about what you talked about to me with acceptance. I'm getting
But,
it. The
but
older,
then, when we're talking about, and I agree with you, the spirit of optimism, I think, is crucial. But also, and I'm sure you've read enough on this. So, people, for example, like Daniel Kahneman, the psychologist, the Nobel prize-winning psychologist who died, I think, last year, he's written many books, as you know. Um, and he talks about the idea, and I'm choosing your words, the spirit of optimism. And it really is about brain wiring.
it is.
And so, what do we do if there are some people who are listening to you right now saying, hang on a minute, Carol, my brain isn't wired like yours. I want to do that. I want to have the idea of the spirit of optimism, but it's hard work. To you,
You're
it
damn
comes naturally.
right. It is hard work. And God, Lee, you're really good at this. All right, so let me share this. You're right, it's hard work. It is easier to lie on the couch and to cry
It
sometimes
is. It is.
than it is to get out there and hit it again. Setbacks. It's not how many times you're knocked down. It's not how many times you have them. It's how you get back. So I was a newspaper reporter, as I said, for almost 7 years. Five of those I was police reporter, 1 year in Philadelphia. Then I went to a larger market where I had to 5, 6 stories a day. I had the first laptop computer. It was about 40 pounds. And so I lived in New York City and worked in New Jersey. And for your folks, it would be like you would add maybe 25 miles, 12, 13 kilometers, something like
Yeah,
that.
it's a long way
So,
to go.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But it was the traffic, right? And so I lived in Brooklyn, worked in Jersey, and I would run to like Lois Lane to a phone booth. I'm really dating myself now. And I would take these little couplers and stick them into the phone, put my knee up, put the 40-pound laptop, story would transfer.
To
I would
send
have
the story, of course you did.
five,
Love
six
it. I love it.
day, 22 cities, 22 towns, 3 cities, and oh my God, hour and a half drive. Okay, so I wrote a story about a little girl who was missing. She happened to be Puerto Rican. She came from Puerto Rico to see her brother graduate from Rutgers Law. And she never came back from the corner store. We call them a bodega. She didn't come back with the milk and the eggs or whatever she was
How old was
going.
she?
15.
Oh,
I wrote this story and she was found murdered, hogtied, raped, throat slit. I wrote bad stories, excuse me, stories about bad people all the time. Gang violence, death, people killing each other. But there was something about youth lost. There was something about this little girl. There was something about not coming back. Talk about not accepting, but final and violent. I couldn't do it anymore. I felt like a voyeur. I didn't want to do this anymore. And so pouting isn't the right word. I was devastated. I don't know. I had done plenty of stories about people getting shot and murdered, but it was something about this little girl.
it
And
suddenly, I think, because you said earlier, and that was another part that I wanted to pick up on, so I'm glad you said what you just did. The idea that we can so easily normalize horrible things. I'm using the word horrible as a euphemism. So you normalized the kind of writing that you were doing for quite a while. And they were all 5 years. For 5 years, you normalized writing about bad people doing bad things. But this suddenly was like the straw that broke the camel's back.
that's exactly right. It broke
15-year-old child. And I suspect also that you may even have gone back to your 16-year-old self.
her.
And
I'm gonna need some
you had
therapy after
your
this.
aspirations, your dreams, which went down a different path because of an accident. Whereas this 15-year-old had none of that. She's gone.
Gone, gone.
And so that was suddenly, and so then what did you do?
And because I had gotten so in with the cops, I saw her body.
Oh, God.
That broke through. I mean, here's this beautiful long braid hanging out of a garbage bag. And I could no longer pretend that I could just write these stories and that it wasn't part of, you're right, me. I was disassociated. It wasn't tuning
But you
on a
have to. We
movie.
all do, don't we? If we don't disassociate ourselves and normalize, because we are in a profession, whatever that might be, say a medic. If every time a medic had to deal with somebody who was seriously ill, dying, surgery, major trauma, physical trauma, and if they started getting emotionally involved, they are not going to be able to do a good job of being a
A
medic.
pilot.
Precisely. I wanted you to say that, not me.
A pilot. And let me and so and my grandmother used to say, my mother's mother, put a pin in that story.
Yeah.
So I for about I don't know, for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I just I just went through the motions. And a woman who was a very good friend of mine, her name is Robin Roberts, and not that of Robin Roberts on TV, but another Robin Roberts. And she said to me, read our handbook for the company. I said, oh, you can go to school and they'll pay for school. Go, 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 go. You're standing on the cliff. Don't jump off. Stop. Think about this. And there was a sabbatical, and you could go off to school. They would pay for it. So I went off to Columbia Journalism School. They paid for my journalism degree. The conditions were I had to stay for 1 year. So for the next year, I tried politics and sports. I tried community. I tried, oh my goodness, all sorts of, but it didn't give me the adrenaline that the other gave me. Now I got something out
Oh,
there.
that's fair. That's very fair and honest of you.
I saw my guy who would become my husband at the time had gone to college together. And his brother was a real good friend of mine. His brother went to the same UVA, University of Virginia. And so I saw him in the subway in New York City, and he's very tall. So I saw him and I said, hey, how are you doing? I'm here in New York. What are you doing in New York? I thought you were. Bup, 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 bup." And we both looked, we said, oh, it's time to go. We could be late for work. He said, where do you work? Where do you work? Where, bup, 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 bup. He gave me his number. I gave him mine. He said, how about lunch? I said, how about dinner? We went out to dinner. And during that dinner, he said this to me. He said, tell me about what it is you want to do. Your background, these jobs are very eclectic. Newspaper report, police report, NFL. But I said, if I tell you, you laugh
You're
at
going to
me.
laugh, you'll say, yes, that's because you didn't believe in it.
No, I didn't even believe it could happen. So I was 30. Well, we're sitting at dinner. And he said, tell me what you want to do. And he said it just like that. And poof, it came out my mouth. I said, I want to fly an airplane.
And he didn't make a face, did he?
No, he just kept staring at me. So I said it again. I said, I want to fly an airplane. It was like somebody popped a bubble. The pressure cooker was finally able to release. And he said, wow, that's interesting. Well, what are you going to do about that? I didn't know what I was going to do about it. And so 2 weeks later, we had dinner. And we both lived in Manhattan apartments. His apartment was so tiny. He said, if I cook, you clean. I said, of course, I'm a good cleaner. And I picked up my placemat. And there under the placemat were gift certificates to a local airport to go fly. What? Oh, this guy's a keeper.
As you can see, there's
Look
silence.
at
I thought maybe it was
your
done.
nose.
2 weeks later,
2 weeks later.
he believed in you, didn't he?
I think so. And I also think, there was some familiarization, right? Because his brother and I were friends. We'd gone to the same
The
university.
wax, no, but all of that, that's just excuses. That's incredible.
So I took my gift certificates. There were 10. I think it was $1,000, which back then was a lot
It's
of
a
money.
lot of money. Yeah, it's a lot of money.
A lot of money, like 1996 or so.
Gosh.
So I called up the flight school, made an appointment. It took me an hour to get over there in a limo, right? Because, I went over there in a limo. And then it took me an hour to get back, and the flight was 1 hour. And back then, you get in the airplane, you would go east, you go south down the Hudson River, go around the Statue of Liberty, head back north past the World Trade Center at the time, make a left and go back over to Teterboro and land, all in an hour. I felt like, oh, I felt like I had lived my whole life for that moment, for that realization, for that I was made. 30 years old.
And today, you're obviously top of the level of pilots. You're very well established. You're a captain. Is that the term in airlines?
Yeah.
I mean, so you've got how many stripes in your uniform?
Boy.
4 stripes. How about that? And when you get on that plane and you fly from A to B, do you still feel that excitement?
Yes. And the day I don't, I'm done. I'll take off my hat. Captain's hat has scrambled egg on it, the braid. Time, I'll take my hat and put it up. When I signed for the release, I signed whew, that I have 187 passengers and crew. I signed for the amount of fuel that we have, for the weather we will encounter, for the mission that we will undertake. And I signed that release after I've studied it, after I think, after I know that we are all set for anything that I could forecast. Now, there may be the unforecast, there may be the unpredictable, but as many things as I can know, I have taken the opportunity, the time to prepare myself and my crew.
And see, that's the thing, Carol, because, when people drive a car on a very basic level, with nobody else in it, just say by myself, and we still think, gosh, here I am driving a car from A to B, and I have so much responsibility. Not do I have to take myself from A to B to get to where I need to be, but there are all these random buses, people, cycles, motorcycles, other cars, so many
Yes,
things on the
today,
street that
right,
I have
today,
to keep an eye out. Yes,
yesterday, yes.
I have to keep an eye out on all of that and then still safely get from A to B. And you, of all people, would know that because you were hit by a car. And yet, you went not just to drive a car, but instead you decided to take responsibility of a vehicle that has what is the seating capacity of one of your planes?
We're just shy of 200,
200. 200 people,
just shy.
excluding crew, which is probably another 10 or I don't know.
Oh, no, no, that's with crew. We're on the Boeing 737. I
Okay.
can bigger, but I
So
like
all in 200 people. So
shy.
what does that mean then in terms of responsibility and understanding? Just for us to appreciate.
So I like to say that when I don't get that little pound in my chest when I do the signature, it's not a signature, it's electronic.
Sure, I get the point. Yeah.
But if I don't get that little, then it's time to go. But I didn't start there. I started with an airplane that weighs less than a minivan.
That's a bit
And
scary.
and
Yeah.
you and here's the thing. You I feel like in the beginning, I thought, oh my goodness, this is so bass backwards. When you are very green is when you teach. So let me explain. You go and you do all your flight certificates, and it took me 8 months. I went from one flight hour to I spent 6 years. The plan was 5 years. So my husband, when I got back from that flight, we went out to yet another dinner. Eating is a big theme in my life, I must say. I gained 140 pounds with my first baby. Put a pin in that story too. So anyway, um, we come back from my flight, and my husband said, "How was it?" And I said, "Oh my God." This is what I'm supposed to do. I'm gonna quit my job tomorrow. He's like, whoa. He said, let's go out. Let's spend let's spend some time. And he got out a piece of paper and pencil. He said, and he wrote the word exit strategy. I said, what's that? He said, it's a financial plan. Right now, we don't know anything. We just know that you love this. We don't know how much it costs. We don't know how much time it takes. We know it's got to be in New Jersey or say Long Island, but how are we going to get you to do this? Let's create an exit strategy. So in that exit strategy, um, it had how much is it going to cost? These are questions to answer. Do we have to move where we're going to be? Is this something that you can do while you're working? All of these things. How will you ensure that you have enough money so you don't have to do it and start and stop and start and stop? He said, I don't know much, but I equate this to the violin or to speaking another language, which you understand. When did you get good at hearing a tongue that you had not been born with when you were immersed? So, sports, language, instrument. My sense is, he said, you're going to do well by doing it all the time. We got to get your money and we got to get your time. It might take 5 years. So, as part of the strategy, let's get you to some of these conventions where you learn about it. I went to Women in Aviation in March of that next year. Let's say this was all Christmassy. Then I went to Women in Aviation a couple months later, 3 months later. and I met a woman named Jenny Beatty. Oh, I should have brought it with me. It's over there. Anyway, at the end of 3 days of convention, picture Job Expo meets um, TED Talks, where people would kind of TED Talks, where people would talk about their experiences in big plenary sessions. And so at the end, she gave me a gift, and it was wrapped up in paper, and I could hear it as I tell you this story. And it was crinkly as I unwrapped it. She said, "Guess what this is?" She's very cheery. Picture Winona Ryder, if you will. That's her physical. Guess what this is? And I said, "What is that?" "It's a coffee cup." Grouchy. She said, "It's a special coffee cup. I beg your pardon." And as I opened it, I saw a picture of Bessie Coleman on it. I had been to college, graduate school, school in Europe, and yet at 31 years old, 30 years old, whatever I was, I had never heard of Bessie Coleman.
Well, I had never heard of Bessie Coleman until I met you. So tell us
And I
about why is it that you wanted to write? See, because you have fulfilled your dream of being a pilot. You've got your four stripes. You can't get any further. That's it. You've got to the zenith. But the wonderful thing in this dream and achieving this dream, and I think that's something that all of us should appreciate and learn from whatever job that we do. We've got to continue to have that heartbeat, that adrenaline pumping within us, and knowing that we love what we're doing. And the minute that you're saying that doesn't work, you're going to take your hat off and say, I'm going to do something else. But so you had Bessie Coleman's Cup a long time ago. You did your lessons, you've achieved your zenith in terms of your career, and you've only just written a book.
it took 12 years.
Yeah, but that's okay. You had other things to do, like learning to fly and then bringing up the family and, minor matters like that. That's all. But no, seriously, um, tell us a little bit about your book. What's it called again?
Pair of wings.
And
And
why
it,
is it so special? It's about a black woman who flew a plane in France, but she's American
that's right. That's right. And she couldn't fly in this country because no one would
because she
teach her.
was black.
She was black.
Of course.
So the year is 1920 when she goes over to France to learn how to fly. She's 2 years before Amelia. Her
Ah,
mother, she was born in 1892. Her mother had been a slave. Her mother had been a slave in Texas. So that meant they got an extra 2 years out of her mother. So when I was looking into the air, when I was looking to, excuse me, to the sky and saying how much I wanted to fly, Bessie Coleman's mother had been born a slave. They got 2 more years out of her. She was seven-ish, because we actually don't know how old she was. She has Bessie Coleman. Bessie Coleman is so remarkable that she goes off to college, only one semester she can stay. She comes back. She goes to Chicago at the start of the Great Migration. So that's the largest movement of African Americans from the agricultural South to the industrial North. And so the jobs that they used to do in the South, they're now doing in the industrial North. And Bessie Coleman is in the crest of that first wave, 1915. She's 23-ish. And when she moves to Chicago, she meets two men, one of whom becomes her mentor, and he is the publisher of the Chicago Defender, and the other man becomes her lover. Now, I love a good story. The
don't tell
mentor,
us too much because we want people to buy your book and read it.
spoiler alert.
Oh, no, 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 we don't want to spoil that. I want to know, I know, seriously, because I think we want to know a little bit about Bessie Coleman. Very little, but enough because they know so much about you. They will go up there. Can you get an Amazon first question?
Absolutely. And
That's
we've
fine.
just published on July 8th, the UK version comes out. But, A Pair of Wings US is also Amazon. So
Sure.
is the audiobook, so is the ebook. So no
Okay.
spoiler alert.
But
Bye, bye.
but don't do a spoiler alert because we would, I think it's a bit like my interviewing you now. I think it should be appreciating as with each page. But
You
here,
will
this young woman who's got a mentor and a lover. Well, you were very lucky. Your mentor and your lover were the same person as in your husband, which
very
is
efficient.
which is really wonderful. But she ends up in France, and there's a story there, obviously. And but tell us about you and what excited you to write that.
So
Was it
here,
because you could see similarities between you and her?
Here I am standing in this parking lot getting ready to get on the bus because the bus back then would take us between the convention center and the hotel. I'm opening up this cup and picture it, there are 5,000 women and they're all in the parking lot, this cacophony of noise. And I felt like I had another one of those moments where the whole world stopped and there was just this image and 50 words, like I like to say, that changed my life. And what was so stunning to me was that what I wanted to do now, she had done 100 years ago in a different language. And yet I didn't know that she even existed. And what was so remarkable to me was that she wanted to do this so badly that she learned how to speak French because her mentor had told her it's unlikely that I'll get you somewhere to fly in the United States. So we're going to have to look somewhere else. You're going to have to learn French because you can't just kind of be a little conversational. You're going to have to know how to fly an airplane in French.
Yes, and that's very different. Yeah.
And by the way, your instructors, they're going to be World War One. We called the Great War back then. They're going to be pilots, soldier combatants who have survived. These aren't going to be just like kind of nice flight instructors who, lunchtime, everyone. These are going to be guys who eat their lunch with a knife out of a can. It's it's going to be difficult. And she says, "Oh, I don't think you know difficult. I was born in Atlanta, Texas. My parents moved to Waxahachie, Texas when I was 2. Heard this story. And when they moved, I picked cotton. I didn't do that. I was a laundress. I was a maid. See these hands? They're rough from work. I know hard work. I'm not worried about that. I've been there. Optimism. Optimism. I can do that. Woo. Yeah, but there are these really big hurdles. Okay, okay, okay. And what this is what fascinated me and made me want to write the book. Some people will see, and you asked me about this earlier, some people will see a challenge and they will say this, I can't ever. But some people are critical thinkers. And so they see, well, the way to get to the 10th floor is to start with the first step. The small airplane I flew that weighed as much as a minivan was the way that you learn. You don't learn on a Boeing 737 with 200 people. You learn on a teeny thing. Then you teach when you're very green so that deep grooves in your head are fastened. They don't just go there, they're fastened in your head. And then once you get a hold of that, then you graduate a little bit more sophisticated aircraft. Now you get the hang of it.
So, what are the things then that we listeners, I mean, we may not want to be a pilot like you or like Bessie Coleman, but we may all, not we may, I'm sure we all have aspirations. All of us will have aspirations, and I want to do X. It could be anything, but
Pastry chef
something
wants to
has
do.
been holding them back. What is it that you can tell us that, what is it? You talked about optimism, which means you have to work at it and you can do it. But what else? Is there some easy trick for us to take away?
No.
No, I knew
There's
you'd say
no
that.
easy trick. And here's the thing, every single journey starts with the first step. Every single apple I have ever eaten, I've eaten one bite at a time. Once I get that one bite down, it's time for the next and the next and the next. I went to flight school and went through flight school like a hot knife through butter. I finished in 8 months. I had a teaching certificate because I wanted that so badly. I finished in June of 2001, July, August, September 11th. Doof.
World changed.
Oh, the world changed. By this time, that good-looking guy who gave me the flight lessons was now my husband. And he said, let's have some children. Let me explain to you why. He said, now, 5 years had gone by, my plan, 6 years, it took my 5 year plan was 6 years. He said, 36. September, I turned 37 in August. I started when I was 36. I finished when I was 37. He said, at 37, it's very hard for women to have babies. I was like, what do you know about this? He said, I'm just telling you what my friends and what I'm watching. And he said, I call it the great subway lie. I said, what do you mean? He said, I'll always be a train behind this one. The human body has an expiration date, and I want children. And you told me we would have them. And I said, I think you should have those kids with your next wife. He said, you know, you told me this. And now there's a pause, not because your career, but because your industry is circling the bowl. He said, I bet
Use that
if
time wisely.
use our time wisely, it's going to be a decade before you can go out there and be the captain that you want to be. And meanwhile, a decade from now, you'll be 47, and there might be technology in place by the time you're 47 and I'm 50, but then we'll be too old to raise them and go through the difficulties that you're going to have with a teenager. He said, I'm just saying. That night, and I'm going to get too personal, I stopped taking my birth control. I was pregnant in 7 days. I gained 140 pounds with that first baby. I weighed 301 pounds.
Wow.
I lost every pound in 1 year. Why? Because I wanted
Wanted to.
I wanted to not lose my medical certificate. That was my motivation. We
Ah.
went to celebrate. I
You've
got
got to
pregnant.
find something. You've got to focus on it. Just saying, I want to write a book. I want to fly a plane. I want to learn to row a boat. I want to, whatever it might be, learn a new language is not enough. You've got to find motivation that underlines that, that scores that, that reminds us. And as you said, you've got to stay optimistic that it's
And
very hard
one
to learn the
more,
language or fly the plane, but
one
you've
more,
got to keep one bite of apple at a time.
one more thing. You got to put a date on it. So the
You've got to put a
difference
date
between
on
a
it. Ah,
dream, yes, ma'am, the difference between a dream and a goal is a date. Every one of those licenses, I would put on my refrigerator and I put a date on it.
but it's a
Now I was
realistic date.
a realistic date. And I superseded all my dates. But there's some dates that you can't change. The date we're born, the date you die.
This
So
conversation on
here's a
hope, optimism, and you know what? The visual image that I want all of us to take away, that lovely, bright, red, juicy apple, where we take one crunch at a time and we enjoy it, and then we put our mouth to it and we take another crunch. Carole Hopson, thank you so very much for
I,
sharing your
I
story seldom told.
I adore you. You have a great brain.
Thank you, Carole. I've loved it. Thank you for listening. This episode has been produced by Naisargi Karnam. As always, if you like this episode, please share. Sharing is the best form of praise and support. I am Smitha Tharoor, and this is Stories Seldom Told.